Titanic, the legacy of a great ship. The Titanic, a luxury ocean liner, embarked on its maiden voyage on April 10, 1912, and sank in the early hours of April 15, 1912. The ship's sinking was one of the most significant maritime disasters in history. The Titanic was a technological marvel of its time, but it was also a symbol of the hubris and overconfidence that characterized the early 20th century. The Titanic's tragic fate has been the subject of countless books, films, and documentaries, and it continues to captivate the imagination of people around the world. Construction and design. The Titanic was built by the Harland and Wolff shipyard in Belfast, Ireland, and was one of the largest and most luxurious ships of its time. The ship was over 880 feet long, with a beam of 92 feet and a height of 175 feet. It weighed over 46,000 tons and could carry over 3,500 passengers and crew. The Titanic's design was innovative for its time, with a double bottom and watertight compartments intended to keep the ship afloat even if multiple compartments were flooded. Maiden voyage. The Titanic set sail on its maiden voyage from Southampton, England, on April 10, 1912. It was scheduled to make stops in Cherbourg, France, and Queenstown, now known as Cove, Ireland, before arriving in New York City. The ship was carrying some of the wealthiest and most famous people of the time, including John Jacob Astor, Benjamin Guggenheim, and Isidor and Ida Strauss. Titanic disaster strikes. On the night of April 14, 1912, the Titanic hit an iceberg in the North Atlantic Ocean. The iceberg punctured several of the Titanic's watertight compartments, causing water to flood into the ship. Despite the efforts of the crew to contain the flooding, the ship's fate was sealed. In the early hours of April 15, the Titanic sank, taking over 1,500 lives with it. Titanic survivors and heroes. Although the Titanic's sinking was a tragedy, there were also stories of heroism and survival. Many passengers and crew members worked tirelessly to help others escape the sinking ship. Lifeboats were in short supply, and many were launched only partially filled. Women and children were given priority to board the lifeboats, and many of the male passengers and crew members chose to remain on board the ship, accepting their fate. Titanic aftermath and legacy. The sinking of the Titanic was a wake-up call for the shipping industry, and many changes were made to improve the safety of future ocean liners. The disaster also had a profound impact on popular culture, inspiring countless books, films, and songs. The Titanic remains a symbol of the hubris and overconfidence of the early 20th century, and its story continues to captivate people around the world. The Titanic's sinking was a tragedy that shook the world. The ship was a marvel of its time, but its fate was sealed by a combination of factors, including the overconfidence of its designers and crew, and the lack of sufficient lifeboats. The legacy of the Titanic lives on, as a cautionary tale and a symbol of the fragility of human life. We must remember the lessons of the Titanic and continue to work to ensure the safety of all who travel by sea. Some of the most famous stories from the Titanic include the unsinkable Molly Brown. One of the most famous survivors of the Titanic was Margaret Brown, who became known as the unsinkable Molly Brown. Brown was traveling in first class on the Titanic and helped to organize the women and children who were boarding the lifeboats. After the sinking, Brown worked tirelessly to help the survivors on other famous stories from the Titanic. The band that played on the 8-member band on the Titanic continued to play music as the ship sank, providing comfort and solace to the passengers and crew. None of the band members survived the sinking, but their bravery and dedication have been remembered through countless films and stories. The love story of Jack and Rose. The 1997 film Titanic popularized the love story of Jack and Rose, two passengers from different classes who fall in love on the ship. Although the characters are fictional, their story has captured the hearts of millions and has become an iconic part of the Titanic's legacy. The tragic fate of the Astor's John Jacob Astor IV, one of the richest men in the world at the time, was traveling on the Titanic with his young wife, Madeline. Although Madeline survived the sinking, John Jacob did not. The Astor story has become a symbol of the tragedy and loss that characterized the Titanic sinking. The mystery of the unknown child. One of the most haunting stories from the Titanic is that of the unknown child, a young boy whose identity was never discovered. The child's body was recovered from the ocean after the sinking, and efforts to identify him were unsuccessful. To this day, the identity of the unknown child remains a mystery. Conclusion. In conclusion, the story of the Titanic continues to captivate people around the world. The tragedy of the ship sinking, the heroism of its passengers and crew, and the legacy of the disaster all contribute to its enduring appeal. From Molly Brown and the band to the love story of Jack and Rose and the tragic fate of the Astors, the Titanic stories continue to resonate with us and remind us of the fragility of life.